What terrified you as a kid that isn't scary now? Asking my grandpa a question. Man, was he intimidating to talk to as a kid. Now I love talking to him when I can. That's awesome that he's still around for you to talk to. Then, I wish I talked to both of my grandpas more. There was a huge abandoned windmill in our neighborhood that once pumped water from the river, at random. The windmill blades would start to turn at night, never in the day. As kids that used to hang out nearby, it felt like the windmill was haunted as it came to life at dark hours. Running up the basement stairs after turning off the light. Just kidding, that shit's still terrifying. That worms would come out of my shower head. The video for Michael Jackson's Thriller. My grandmother's wallpaper at night. Bees and wasps. To be honest, I still prefer they don't buzz around me, but when I was little I remained a safe 5 meters away from them. The Beast from The Sandlot. Freaked me out back then, but now that I can see how low budget the dog looks, still an amazing movie by the way, I find it a bit less scary. Thunderstorms. I used to hide under the covers and could only run from the room between flashes. Now I will sit at the window and watch. I love a good thunderstorm now. All it took was a very weird 9-ish-year-old me to stand at the window during a big storm and yell things like, "Is that all you've got?" Yeah, kinda like Lieutenant Dan, but before I ever saw Forrest Gump. The Bermuda Triangle. I've encountered it a lot less than I thought I would have. My bedroom as a kid was a den converted into a bedroom laundry room, and one wall was covered in a black mirror with gold paint flecks. Very 70s. But at night the shadows combined with the dark glass and paint made me imagine faces, figures, etc. It really scared me, and I would line up my stuffed animals along my bed to protect me. A straight row of fully grown trees. Grew up in the desert. Trees were around but not packed densely and were mostly palo verde trees or palm trees. But there was a row of trees that looked like what I consider most would imagine typical trees look like. And that one row of trees was also in close proximity to a large prison. My brother told me that's where Mr. Bujudi lived and where the escaped murderers would hide when they'd break out of prison. Oh yeah. Did I mention we had a guy break out of prison and murder the town librarian when I was a kid? So yeah, tree lines. In my haste last night I did not go and fact check my childhood memories. I had conflated escaped inmates and the librarian murder into the same story. It's not. What I was confused about was the memory of my dad picking me up on my walk home from school. Normally I would walk past the library, because he knew that the search for the murderer of the librarian was ongoing. And there were a few times we locked down the school, and the rumor mill was that there was a prisoner escape. I have no idea on how I could verify that or not. Although, there have been prisoners that have taken correctional officers as hostages and a librarian at the prison as a hostage in attempts to escape. Balloons. Specifically, balloons popping. When I was really young my dad popped one near my face as a joke. But it really traumatized me. I hated going to birthday parties because there were always games where you had to pop a balloon in some form. Oh man. This was a big one for me too. I really hated the loud, sudden noise. And I also hated all the people that knew about my fear and took advantage of it by popping as many balloons in my face as possible. They were all digbags. I still can't stand balloons popping. And I'm 30 now. I've never liked sudden loud sounds that make me jump. I'm okay with planned fireworks like the ones at Disneyland and 4th of July firework events planned by my city because they are expected and on schedule. My grandparents live near Disneyland, and when I used to come over all the time, at 9 PM you could see the Disney fireworks from her balcony, and even though they're loud you know when to expect them so you can prepare and put in earplugs before they go off. But balloon popping are unpredictable and you can't even expect them. Catching fire. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to get set on fire at all, but the amount of stop, drop, and roll lessons I got in kindergarten made me think this was going to be a once-a-year thing at minimum. Quicksand. Really thought it was a major issue. Sun death. Also I cried when I saw a black woman for the first time. Gorillas. That SpongeBob episode as a kid scarred me. I would have to close my eyes once that part came on, and my brother had to tell me when it was over. My uncle, knowing I was scared of it, told me killer gorillas lived in the dark part of the basement. So every time I went down there for something, I'd sprint full speed back up the stairs. I was always afraid of Baby Bell cheese. Not sure why, but I'm over it now that I'm older. This one is completely random. The song, One Way or Another, scared me so badly. Me as a child, I would cover my ears when it played. My big sister worked at the skating rink and would do double duty babysitting me while she worked. They played that song exactly one time while we were there. I freaked out. It was dark in there and the song was loud and coming from everywhere. They had this little coin operated cartoon booth, sort of like a photo booth. Get and draw the curtain. But instead of a camera, there is a television. You put in a quarter and it plays a random cartoon. I hid in there, screamed, crying and kicking anyone who tried to check on me with roller skate clad feet. They turned the music off completely so that my sister could get me out of the booth. My sister made sure that they never played it while I was there again. Another time we were watching the Muppet Show and there was a pretty blonde woman hosting. Then this bee starts singing One Way with a bunch of effing monsters. I jumped up and ran to my room and hid in my closet. I couldn't trust my favorite TV shows anymore either. I have no idea why I was so afraid of that song, but it genuinely terrified me. I like it fine now. Thistles and cacti. Basically any plant that had nasty spikes. Whenever I'd walk in a grass field and see a tiny thistle plant near my foot, I would stop dead in my tracks and call for help. Nowadays, I still get uneased at the thought of falling onto those things, especially the giant thistles. As a kid, I was somehow able to watch the first 2 Jurassic Park movies so much that I knew the script off by heart by age 5, but an episode of Thomas the Tank Engine scared the shit out of me. This was about the time the show started to move away from adapting Audrey's stories and started writing their own scripts. As part of this, they decided to make a bunch of spooky episodes. I was fine with all of them except one about a big boulder. From memory, the gist of the story is they open a new quarry right at the spot a gigantic boulder sits on top of a cliff. One of the engines, Rusty, hates the place cause it feels as if the boulder's watching him. Eventually, they destabilize the cliff enough that the boulder drops onto the tracks and you have a series of Indiana Jones style chases. So what exactly was so scary about it? Simple really, the boulder had a face. Now I know you're wondering, but don't all the trains have faces? Yeah, but their faces are distinct from the rest of them to the point you can tell they are meant to have faces. The thing with the boulder is that it didn't consistently have a face. It only has a face at a couple of points in the episode that randomly appears. So it's a normal rock and then bam, it's a rock with a very angry face. I think it was the inconsistency of whether the rock was sentient or not that freaked young me out. After confessing this to a friend as an adult, I ended up finding the episode on YouTube and just laughing at how ridiculous it was being scared of it. The greatest irony of all, I went from being terrified of a rock to getting a degree in geology. Fantasia Mickey. Pretty sure it was a nightmare that started it, but I was terrified of him for several years. My sisters then thought it was funny to hide a little figurine of him in my room and move it around at random to scare me even more. The Unsolved Mysteries theme music. Hearing that, then stories of missing kids and ghosts led to many sleepless nights as a kid. Adult me binge watches a show now. Bad grades. Can't get bad grades if you're not in school anymore. Escalators. Many thanks to Rescue 911 for convincing me I was going to get eaten by one if my shoe wasn't tied. That pipe's screensaver from Windows. I had nightmares getting crushed by them. When I rarely get them now, I sometimes can use them for lucid dreaming. So I win? Thanks to Goosebumps, I was afraid of loofahs, sponges, and those little poof ball things you wash off with. I didn't get over this stupid fear into adulthood after I got married. Dinosaurs. I knew they were extinct, but I was still terrified of a T-Rex pulling the roof off my house and eating me.